Hello, everybody. Hola. Welcome. It's always nice to be in Galveston in January, and we try to make a habit of being here in January because it's just a great month to be here, and I like the winter beach. Um, this show came together really because Dennis asked me, I guess back in September, do you want to do a show here? And I was like, yes, I would love to. And really, I was inspired by Tim and that whole punk rock movement. I grew up in the 70s with my parents being antique kind of dealers on the weekends. They would set up at the Canton flea market and other flea markets. So I kind of got hauled around with them and started collecting things back then. I always say I have a flea market education. And what I mean by that is that you're kind of able to hone in on something that you're collecting in the middle of a bunch of detritus and junk and stuff. And so that kind of informs a lot of what I do with my work. I paint on vintage canvas and vintage paper. um, I started to paint really because I was going to antique shows and having to get up really early and shop antique markets at 5 in the morning. And so I would drive across the country to Brimfield, Massachusetts or Ohio, and I would buy an old sketchbook or a scrapbook and vintage canvas. And using India ink, I could set up in my hotel room and just start, painting the hours away. In Waxahachie, where my wife Julie and I have a web gallery, got a studio room with a wooden wall, and I usually just kind of stretch the canvas up on the wall and just start painting. And I usually just kind of start in a corner, usually with no real thought in mind as to what's about to happen. So there's sort of a certain kind of a mystical unfoldment that happens to me as a simple line becomes something that's recognizable to other people. I think that every line has a lot of information encoded into it. And if you really look at lines closely, they reveal quite a bit. I guess I'm kind of a little bit like influenced by Tim Kerr and the punk rock thing, in that when I was a kid, going to Free Flight Skateboard Park in Carrollton, Texas, my mom would drop me off there on a Saturday morning, and I would literally fly through the air on a skateboard. And I think it was that early influence of skateboarding and how that merged with punk rock in the late 70s that made me want to start, or actually not made me, it gave me the idea or the courage to pick up a paintbrush, dip it into some India ink, and away it goes. And I've got to say that probably Raymond Pettibone is a big influence on me. Just the awkwardness that he achieves in some of the characters that he paints struck me early on with the Black Flag uh, material, the things that he did for the shows for the band Black Flag. And now Raymond's work is in museums all around the country. So um, punk rock should be taken seriously. And if you look at all of those bands, they all had some kind of symbol. And the Big Boys symbol that Tim Kerr designed was an anarchy skateboard. And so that simple image conveys a lot of information in kind of a reductionist line informed way. And I was that kid that your name here. I picked up a paintbrush because you could paint on a T-shirt that you bought at the DAV, and you could make a statement about a band that you really liked. The band Suicidal Tendencies was known for all of their fans painting on shirts with these different really graphic designs using Sharpies and big markers and stuff like that. My mom was born in India, and my grandparents lived there for 30 years. From 1930 until 1951, they moved to Waxahachie, a little town just south of Dallas. And Waxahachie uh, really influenced me in a big way because it's a rural area, and you could buy these cattle markers at the feed store downtown. And so, like, drawing with those cattle markers on a hot metal railroad car can be kind of addictive. And Bill Daniel, who was a young punk rock skateboarder photographer, started to document some of the drawings on the side of railroad cars that were done with these oil stick markers. And when Bill was working on his film, we showed it at Webb Gallery when it was still kind of in its unedited formats. And I think Tim played music a time or two, and maybe Ralph White played some banjo as Tim was putting his, as Bill was putting his thing together. And just seeing those railroad workers or hobos drawing on rail cars influenced me quite a bit to go out and sneak into a rail yard and look at trains and mark on trains. So I kind of didn't want to get in trouble marking on trains, so I started to work on paper and on vintage canvas, and being really influenced by self-taught artists and the freedom to just create whatever you're working on in kind of a repetitive fashion. The cowboy image with the hat somehow is one of the things that I repeat. And we now kind of spend our time going back between North Texas and Waxahachie and far west Texas, Fort Davis, where there are lots of different styles of cowboy hats. That there's something about those floppy rolling lines of a cowboy hat that are endlessly fascinating to me. I love sombreros too. We went to the Bryan Museum this afternoon, and we were amazed by the sombreros in the collection there. Um, I guess I could talk on and on about all kinds of things. I should probably mention that Buck and Camp, my gallerists in Marfa, Texas, are here en route to Japan. And JP and Aaron Hosley from the Lone Gallery are here as well. And my lovely wife, Julie, is here. So I really appreciate everybody coming out. Does anybody have any questions? I guess a stump jumper is a term of somebody that's like a wood chopper. And I think in certain areas of the country, they would have employed hobos or people to come and cut stumps. And so that's what a stump jumper is. And a sawbuck, is that a $20 bill or a $10 bill? I don't know. I really love old, like, detective magazines and the old film noir kind of films, and that type of nomenclature from the 1930s and 40s. We've kind of lost the usage of some of these, odd terms like that. And so there's a number of books that, if you really get into slang, um, that are worth having. There's a great book about cowboy slang, and it's got all kinds of really interesting words about saddles and bridles and all kinds of interesting uh, nomenclature. But yeah, the heads that I do the phrenology heads kind of have a lot of different uh, things that I'll research in old books and put in there. And I've done them on stars, plants, rocks, kind of all sorts of things, a number for different cities and things like that. But yeah, I started collecting old books kind of as a result of my grandmother who brought back books from India. She was an Assembly of God missionary, and she had a lot of books on theosophy and the occult and things like that. But I don't think she was really, into that. I think she had them because she wanted to be informed as a missionary about what she needed to be, trying to preach against. But I got a hold of these books and just really was amazed by the imagery and iconography. So, inheriting my grandmother's collection, I started to deal and collect old books. And back in like the 80s, 90s, you could really go into bookstores, and the parapsychology section at the back of the store was always, full of interesting characters. And I really love going up to Archer City to Larry McMurtry's bookstore. And he wasn't into the odd occult material at all, so it was always priced low. But I bought a lot of books on phrenology and theosophy and Rosicrucians and Freemasons and all of that. And when I turned 21, I joined the Masonic Lodge, and then I joined the Oddfellows Lodge, and kind of got interested in collecting fraternal art and artifacts. And I realized that other people were collecting this stuff. Herbert Hemphill, who was one of the founders of the Museum of American Folk Art, was a huge lodge collector, and other people were as well. So I kind of found camaraderie and talked to other people that collected that material. And when I say lodge stuff, I'm talking about like the painted banners and carved wooden things and things of that nature. So one of my heroes is Lynn Dell, and she did two really important books on Texas folk art. She did Black History, Black Vision in 1989 that traveled around Texas, and incredible show of African American self-taught Texans that Julie and I got a chance to meet and get to know a number of those artists like Johnny Swearingen and Reverend J.L. Hunter. And so that meeting those older artists really was a big inspiration for me to start painting and doing art myself. And so in 2015, or actually a little bit before that, Lynn Adele asked me if there was a book about lodge art, and I said, no, there's not. So she said, well, let's do one. And so the book As Above, So Below was published by UT Press, and it's still in print, and you can buy it from UT. Starting after Dennis asked me to do the show, I started researching things in Galveston and kind of was already interested in a number of things here. And so, yeah, that kind of it came together. Thinking about that's me laying out on the beach, and these are all the things that I think of when I think of Galveston. So it came together, yeah, fairly quickly. Yeah, I guess it's sort of like my brain kind of works that way, and it helps me to remember things by painting it. And I think that's something that's important about the act of what goes on with ink. That when you put it down, just the fact that it's drying is a huge thing because it's curing out forever. And with India ink, it's a pretty stable material. And I think that maybe the first time I picked up India ink was at my grandmother's house, and she had a bottle of it laying around, and it's like, what's this stuff? And it gets all over you, and that part's really fun. So it's a piece of canvas that I had in my studio, and I just started working on that figure, and there you have it. So yeah, it actually was a piece that I had done that was really big, and I had it hanging outside in Fort Davis, and it was really windy, and the wind split it in half. So on the back side of it is part of another uh, painting that you can kind of see coming through slightly. But oh yeah, and the coconut heads. So I need to probably talk about that. I told you I was had a flea market education, and I just got obsessed with collecting coconut heads. Going to flea markets, I started buying them, and there's something about the faces that really make me smile. And um, it was such a simple thing that was done repetitively, and I think that repetition is something that I really respond to. And so yeah, the coconut heads, I love them, and I probably have like maybe about 300 of them.